Welcome. I'm so glad that you could join me for this very special feast. It was the night Jesus was betrayed. He had wanted to eat the Passover with his disciples. And so preparations were made. And Jesus had sent Peter and John into Jerusalem so that they could find a room prepared and the meal and everything ready for the feast of the Passover. When Jesus and the 12 arrived at their place prepared, it was meant to be a celebration. It started off, though, with the disciples arguing and debating and bickering, and Jesus had to set them straight, and then he washed their feet. The 12, they ate their meal together, and then Jesus would have instituted what we know as the Lord's Supper. He would have taught a great message from John 14 and 15 and 16. He would have prayed his high priestly prayer in John 17. They would have sung a hymn, and then they would have made their way to Gethsemane, where Jesus would be betrayed. Well, they were celebrating the Passover. And the Passover in Exodus 12, it was about a special commemoration for the Hebrew people, because they wanted to remember the great deliverance from Egypt, from slavery, from bondage, from darkness. And they wanted to remember what God had done for them. And so on the 14th day of Nisan, the first month of the year, they slaughtered a lamb of 1 year, a male without blemish. The twilight, they slaughtered the lamb, and then they would take the blood. And as they took the blood, they would apply it to the tops and the side posts of the door frame. And it was there so that when the angel of death would come through Egypt to slay the firstborn of people and of animals, he would pass over their house when he saw the blood. And that's where we get the name Passover, as the angel of death passed over the homes where the blood was applied. Well, they would have a meal together, and they would eat it in haste. They would eat it with their cloak tucked into their belts, and their sandals on their feet, and their staff in their hand. And their meal was bitter herbs, and unleavened bread, and roast lamb, and the wine that they would take to nourish them and strengthen them for the journey that was ahead. Well, when Jesus was eating the Passover with his disciples, when he finished, he instituted what we know as the Lord's Supper. He took the bread and he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples, and he said, "This is my body, which is given for you. Take it and eat it in remembrance of me." And then at the end of the meal, he took the cup, and he spoke of his blood, which was shed for many for the remission of sins. And he said, "Take the cup and drink it in remembrance of me. And as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you show the Lord's death until he comes." Jesus and his disciples were celebrating the Passover. They wanted to celebrate God's great provision of deliverance, freedom from bondage, freedom from slavery, freedom to become new persons, a new people. They wanted to celebrate the provision of God and his blessings upon them and the strength that he would give them for the journey they had before them. And they also wanted to celebrate with anticipation of the hope for a certain future, that God would lead them and guide them and be with them and lead them into a land of plenty and a land of great provision. And so they were excited to celebrate that. Well, Jesus and his disciples wanted to celebrate that and to remember the protection, blessing, and provision of the Lord, the great God. And so it is for us today. As we come together, we celebrate. We celebrate God with thankfulness in our hearts and anticipation and hope, looking to what is next with our journey with God. So as we join together today, let this be a meaningful time for each one of us. I ask that in the name of Jesus. God bless you.